The holographic screens exploded to life across the Sovereign Summit, and Elena Voss watched Marcus Thorne, her husband of 7 years, collapse to his knees as his own voice thundered through the chamber. Elena, it's done. Sophia gets me in ways you never did. $280 million. Gone. Their marriage? A calculated lie. And the woman standing beside him. Sophia Crane wore a smile that could cut glass. But here's what Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew. The quiet wife he betrayed? She wasn't just Elena Voss. She was the architect of the $4.5 trillion empire they were all standing in. Every world leader in that room owed their secrets to her code. Every encrypted message, every classified file, every digital fortress protecting nations from collapse. All of it flowed through systems she'd built in the shadows. And before this night ends, you'll watch her burn their world to ash. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, if you've ever been underestimated, you need to hear this story. Hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me the craziest betrayal you've ever witnessed. And subscribe because this tale is about to get wild. Let's dive in. 3 months earlier, Elena stood in their penthouse kitchen in Manhattan, wrapping a custom Patek Philippe watch. The engraving read, "Our legacy, M&E forever." She'd spent weeks designing it. The watch face contained a microscopic circuit board pattern, a little inside joke. Marcus worked at Helix Solutions, a subsidiary of Quantum Nexus. He had no idea Quantum Nexus answered to her. Nobody did. That was the point. Surprise. Elena's face lit up as Marcus walked through the door at 11 p.m. Again, he blinked at the gift box, his tie loosened, that faraway look in his eyes she'd been seeing more often lately. "Babe, you didn't have to open it." His fingers fumbled with the ribbon. When he saw the watch, something flickered across his face. Not joy. Something else. Relief? Guilt? "It's incredible," he said, but he wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her, at his reflection in the window, at the man he saw there. Elena knew about Marcus's father. Brennan Thorne had been a titan of industry, who'd made his fortune in oil, then lost it to bad bets and worse pride. Before dying of a heart attack when Marcus was 23, Brennan had spent years drilling one message into his son's skull. "You're too soft. Too ordinary. You'll never build anything that matters." Those words haunted Marcus like ghosts in his blood. "I have a late meeting tomorrow," Marcus said, kissing her forehead. "Helix is launching that new security protocol. Big night." "I know," Elena said softly. She knew everything about that protocol. She'd written half the underlying code herself, through layers of anonymous contributions and shell consultancies. What she didn't know yet, what she couldn't see coming, was that Marcus had been staying late for different reasons. Sophia Crane was brilliant in the way that dangerous people often are, sharp enough to see opportunities, ruthless enough to seize them, charming enough to make you thank her while she picked your pocket. She clawed her way up from a state school to MIT, then into Quantum Nexus's R&D division, where she worked on quantum encryption algorithms that would make her rich if she could just find the right angle, the right leverage. Then she met Marcus Thorne at a company mixer. He was handsome in that polished, anxious way some men are, designer suit hiding a desperate heart. She watched him drink too fast and talk too loud about building something that matters and proving everyone wrong. She saw the cracks immediately. "Your wife doesn't understand the pressure, does she?" Sophia said one night, 3 weeks into their affair. They were in her apartment in Tribeca, expensive sheets tangled around them, the city lights painting their skin in neon. Marcus stared at the ceiling. "Elena's, she's kind. She's good, but she doesn't get it. She's content with quiet, with small. My father used to say that contentment is just another word for giving up. What if you didn't have to choose?" Sophia's finger traced circles on his chest. "What if you could build something massive? Your own empire, not your father's. Not Helix's. Yours. With what capital? With what you already have access to?" Marcus turned to look at her. "What are you talking about?" Sophia smiled. She'd been downloading proprietary Nexus code for months, routing it through encrypted channels, building a blueprint for a startup that would revolutionize sovereign tech. All she needed was funding, and a front man whose wife apparently had family money. I'm talking about our legacy, Marcus. Together. The voicemail came through while Elena was in her private office. The real one, not the home study Marcus knew about. This one was 40 floors below street level in a quantum nexus black site, surrounded by servers that process more data in a second than most countries handled in a year. She was prepping for the Global Sovereign Tech Summit, the annual gathering where world leaders quietly negotiated with the real powers, the tech architects who held their secrets. Her phone buzzed. Marcus's name. She smiled, expecting maybe a sweet message, maybe an apology for missing dinner again. Instead, "Elena, it's done. I can't keep pretending. Sophia gets me in ways you never did. She sees the empire I meant to build. I've wired $280 million from our accounts. Yes, I found your hidden portfolios. Don't act surprised. To start fresh. To build something real. Our legacy, without you holding me back. I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you are always going to be too small for what I need to become." The phone slipped from Elena's fingers. Not clattered. Slipped, like her hands had forgotten how bones worked. She stood there, this woman who'd built digital fortresses for nations, who created algorithms that predicted wars. And she couldn't breathe. The room spun. $280 million. That was a family trust fund money, yes, but also operational capital she'd been moving through legitimate channels. Money she'd earned through years of anonymous consulting that Marcus thought came from her dead parents' investments. But worse than the money, so much worse, was a casual cruelty in his voice. Too small, like she was some obstacle to his greatness instead of the woman who'd loved him through his nightmares about his father, who'd held him when he woke up crying about not being enough. Elena's assistant, a granite-faced woman named Juliet, appeared in the doorway. "Ma'am, the preliminary summit briefings," she stopped. "What happened? Pull every file we have on Sophia Crane. Every email, every access log, every movement through our systems for the past 6 months." Elena's voice came out flat, mechanical, "and get me Marcus's locations for the same period. I want to know everywhere he's been, everyone he's talked to, every transaction he thinks I don't know about." "How deep do you want to go?" Elena looked up, and Juliet actually stepped back at what she saw in her boss's eyes. "Bedrock. I want to see the foundation. They think they're building their empire on. Then I want to know how to turn it to sand." The data came back in waves, each one worse than the last. First wave, 17 hotel check-ins over 3 months. Marcus and Sophia, not even trying to hide it, using credit cards linked to accounts he thought Elena couldn't access. Second wave, email chains where Sophia detailed her plan. She'd identified 47 proprietary quantum nexus algorithms that, if slightly modified and repackaged, could form the backbone of a new security firm. The emails to Marcus drip with manipulation. "Your vision is so much bigger than what Elena understands." And finally, a man who isn't afraid of his own potential. Third wave, the worst one. A message from Marcus to Sophia, sent 2 weeks ago. "Sometimes I think she knows more than she lets on, like she's hiding something big. But honestly, even if she is, she's too timid to ever do anything with it. My father was right. Some people are just built to be small. I refuse to be one of them." Elena read that line 17 times. Too timid. The woman who'd created quantum encryption protocols that protected nuclear launch codes. Too timid. She laughed. It came out wrong, broken, like glass cracking. Juliet waited, patient as stone. "Did you find what they're planning to incorporate?" Elena asked. "Monaco. They've already set up shell companies. Luxury apartment purchase last week. Initial investor meetings scheduled for next month, right after the summit. They're using stolen Nexus code. Modified, but yes, traceable if you know what to look for." Elena stood, walking to the window overlooking layers of server farms. Somewhere up above, 40 floors up, the city lived its ordinary life. People worried about rent and romance, and whether they'd said the wrong thing at dinner. Down here, she could reshape the world with a keystroke. Start with surveillance. Elena said quietly, "I want every call, every text, every whisper. Legal or not, I don't care anymore. Build me a profile of their relationship, when it started, how it evolved, every crack in their foundation. And then Elena's reflection smiled back at her from the dark glass, but her eyes stayed cold. Then I'm going to give Marcus exactly what he asked for. A legacy, just not the one he imagined. Over the next 3 weeks, Elena became someone she didn't recognize. Or maybe she became exactly who she'd always been underneath the loving wife costume. She started with the small things. Logged into Marcus's computer remotely, adjusted a few decimals in his quarterly projections at Helix. Nothing massive, just enough that his presentations to the board started showing minor inconsistencies. Must be the stress, his colleagues would murmur, and Marcus would smile tightly, hearing his father's voice. Sloppy. Mediocre. For Sophia, Elena went surgical. A false promotion appeared in her employee file, a lateral move to a new, special project division that didn't actually exist but looked incredible on paper. Sophia, thinking she'd been tapped for something extraordinary, started bragging to colleagues, which made her actual supervisor furious about being bypassed. Office politics did the rest. Suddenly, Sophia was attending meetings nobody had actually called her to, working on initiatives that overlapped with other teams, creating friction everywhere she stepped. But the real masterpiece was a deep fake. Elena had access to enough audio of both Marcus and Sophia to build convincing voice models. She created a series of private conversations where they discussed not just stealing Nexus code, but selling it to foreign governments. China, Russia, bidders who'd pay billions. It was fiction, but it was perfect fiction, layered with enough real details that it would pass any surface-level forensic analysis. Late one night, alone in her real office, Elena sat with her finger hovering over the deploy button that would start seeding these files into discoverable locations. Her hand shook. "Am I becoming the monster they made?" she whispered to the empty room. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus, lying about working late when she could see from GPS that he was at Sophia's apartment. "Don't wait up. Big breakthrough on the project. Love you. Love you." Elena pressed a button. The beautiful thing about revenge, Elena was learning, was that once you lit the fuse, you could just watch it burn. Marcus and Sophia's relationship started fracturing on its own, accelerated by Elena's gentle nudges. She intercepted messages showing Sophia had been reaching out to other Helix executives, fishing for better opportunities. The woman was hedging her bets, treating Marcus like a stepping stone rather than a partner. Elena made sure Marcus saw those messages. She also made sure Sophia discovered that Marcus had been moving money into personal accounts, not their joint venture funds. Only 15 million, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. Is he really committed? Or am I just another person he'll abandon when something better comes along? By week 4, their passionate text had turned sharp with accusations. "Marcus, you said you were all in on this." "Sophia, I am, but I'm not stupid. Your wife might be clueless, but I'm not. I see you keeping options open." "Marcus, that's rich coming from someone who had lunch with Garrett from C-Suite last week." "Sophia, that was networking, Marcus. Something you might try instead of drowning in your daddy issues." That last text made Elena pause. Even Sophia saw it, the gaping wound in Marcus that no amount of success could heal. For a moment, just a flickering, dangerous moment, Elena felt something that might have been pity. Then she remembered. Too small, too timid. The feeling passed. She sent them both the same message from encrypted source, promising a legacy-defining opportunity at the Global Sovereign Tech Summit. An investor group, she claimed, wanted to meet them specifically. Potential billion-dollar backing. All they had to do was show up, together, in front of everyone. 3 days before the summit, Elena sat in her penthouse, the one she'd shared with Marcus, now echoing with his absence, and opened a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's cars. She poured a glass with steady hands, drank it alone. The surveillance feeds played on her laptop. Marcus in Monaco, touring their new apartment. Sophia beside him. But her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. They were building an empire on stolen ground, and they both knew it, but neither could stop now. Elena's reflection stared back from the darkened window. "Who are you?" she asked it. The woman looking back had her face, but different eyes. Colder eyes. The kind that could watch the world burn and take notes on the flame patterns. Her phone rang. Juliet, everything's ready. The summit security team has the evidence files. They'll discover them during routine screening. Authorities are briefed. Legal has the freezing orders ready the moment you give the word. No due process, Elena said quietly. We're bypassing every protection they should have. They bypass their vows to you. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? Elena closed her eyes. Somewhere inside her, the woman who'd wrapped that watch with hope and love was screaming. But that woman was small, timid, too afraid of her own power. And Elena Voss was done being small. Execute, she said. The Global Sovereign Tech Summit took place in a converted weapons facility in Virginia, now transformed into a technological cathedral. Glass and steel, and enough encryption to make the NSA jealous. Presidents and prime ministers mingled with tech founders whose names the public would never know. These were the people who actually ran things, the architects of the digital age, the invisible hands on the levers of power. And standing at the center of it all, preparing to give the keynote address, was someone most of them had never seen. Elena Voss, the quantum ghost, they called her in certain circles. The architect who built in shadows. Marcus and Sophia arrived separately but met at the entrance, both dressed for triumph. Marcus wore a Tom Ford suit that cost $13,000, paid for with stolen money. Sophia wore confidence like armor, her smile predatory and bright. Ready? She asked. Marcus nodded, but his hands trembled slightly. After tonight, everything changes. Our investor meeting is in the private suite at 8. By 9, we'll have signed term sheets. And by tomorrow will be legends, Sophia finished. They walked into the summit hall, and the doors closed behind them like a trap, snapping shut. Neither of them noticed Elena standing in the shadows of the upper gallery, watching them enter her web. Neither of them knew that in exactly 47 minutes, their world would end. Neither of them understood that the woman they betrayed wasn't just someone's wife. She was the architect of their destruction, and she'd built it to last forever. The lights dimmed. The holographic displays flickered to life. A figure stepped onto the stage, silhouetted against screens, showing code that ran the world. In the audience, Marcus felt his phone vibrate. A message from an unknown number. Did you really think I was too small to fight back? His blood turned to ice. On stage, the figure stepped into the light. Elena's voice filled the chamber. Good evening. My name is Elena Voss, and I built the world you're all standing in. Tonight, I'm going to show you what happens when someone tries to steal it. Marcus and Sophia locked eyes across the room, terror dawning on their faces like a shared nightmare. And in that moment, they finally understood. They hadn't betrayed a wife. They betrayed a god. The holographic displays erupted across the summit chamber, three-dimensional timelines spinning through the air like digital constellations. Each one told a story. Elena's voice cut through the silence, calm as a surgeon's blade. Quantum Nexus was founded 11 years ago in a basement in Baltimore. Not Silicon Valley. Not Cambridge. Baltimore. Her eyes swept the crowd, landing briefly on Marcus before moving on. The founder was anonymous by design. Sovereign tech requires trust, and trust requires distance from ego. The screen shifted, showing incorporation documents, patent filings, lines of code that nations had bet their security on. That founder created the quantum encryption protecting nuclear arsenals in 7 countries. The AI prediction models that prevented 3 economic collapses. The data fortresses that keep your secrets actually secret. Presidents leaned forward. CEOs gripped their armrests. That founder is me. The room detonated with whispers. Marcus's face drained of color. Beside him, 3 seats over, Sophia's mouth fell open. No, Marcus breathed. That's impossible. But the screens were already shifting again, showing Elena at coding terminals, Elena in classified briefings with world leaders, Elena's signature on contracts that had shaped the digital age. Every document authenticated, every timestamp verified, every proof ironclad. My husband, Marcus Thorne, works for Helix Solutions, Elena continued, her voice never wavering. A subsidiary I created to handle client-facing operations. He's a good executive, competent, professional. Marcus felt every eye in the room turn toward him. He wanted to sink through the floor. What he didn't know, what I chose not to burden him with, was that his salary, our home, our life together, all of it was subsidized by the empire I built in the shadows. I kept it secret not from shame, but from love. I wanted him to feel like the provider, the man his father told him he'd never be. Sophia grabbed Marcus's wrist. We need to leave. Now. But security had already moved to the exits. Subtle, professional, inescapable. 3 months ago, Elena said, Marcus made a choice. He and Sophia Crane, one of my R&D specialists, decided that my empire would make an excellent foundation for their own. The screen shifted again. Hotel receipts. Emails discussing stolen code. Bank transfers totaling $280 million. Monaco property deeds. Shell company formations. Every betrayal laid bare in high definition. They took my money. They took my innovations. They took my trust. Elena's voice finally cracked, just slightly, and the room felt like an earthquake tremor, and they did it while telling me I was too small to understand their ambitions. I think it's important, Elena said, that everyone understands the full context of the situation. Her fingers moved across a control panel. Marcus's voice filled the chamber, amplified through speakers designed for presidential addresses. Elena, it's done. I can't keep pretending. Sophia gets me in ways you never did. She sees the empire I meant to build. I wired $280 million from our accounts. Yes, I found your hidden portfolios. Don't act surprised. To start fresh. To build something real. Our legacy, without you holding me back. I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you were always going to be too small for what I need to become. The silence after was nuclear. Marcus stood up, his chair clattering backward. Elena, please, that's not, I didn't mean. Sit down. It wasn't Elena who spoke. It was Garrett Chun, the Secretary of Commerce, whose entire department's cybersecurity ran on Nexus protocols. His voice carried the weight of governmental authority. Marcus sat. Sophia was whispering frantically into her phone, but nothing was going through. Elena had locked down all communications in the room. Nobody was calling for help. Nobody was escaping the story. That voicemail arrived while I was preparing for the summit, Elena continued. While I was ensuring that your governments, your corporations, your secrets would remain protected. And I'll admit something to all of you, I broke. She paused, and for the first time, let them see the real wound beneath the armor. I spent 3 days crying, questioning everything, wondering if my secrecy had somehow caused this. If I'd been a better wife, more open, less independent, would have stayed. The vulnerability landed like a punch. Half the room wanted to look away. The other half couldn't. But then I realized something. This wasn't about me being too small. This was about Marcus being too afraid of his own smallness to see the truth. The screen shifted again, and this time, Marcus genuinely looked like he might vomit. His father's face appeared. Brennan Thorne, photographed at some industry gala years ago, looking at his son with barely concealed contempt. Marcus's father spent his life convinced his son was weak, mediocre, destined for obscurity. Elena's voice softened, almost pitying. And Marcus spent his life trying to prove him wrong by becoming exactly what his father was, ruthless, opportunistic, and ultimately empty. Stop, Marcus whispered. Please, Elena, not this. But Elena wasn't done. Sophia Crane, Elena said, turning her attention, is brilliant. Truly, her work on quantum-resistant algorithms is groundbreaking. Under different circumstances, she could have been my successor. Sophia's head snapped up, hope flickering in her eyes for just a second. Instead, she chose to be a parasite. The screens exploded with data. Sophia's personal emails appeared. Conversations Elena's surveillance had captured over the past 3 months. Messages of other executives at Helix and competing firms, always fishing for opportunities, always positioning for advantage. But worse, much worse, were the messages about Marcus. He's pathetically easy to manipulate. Daddy issues deeper than the Mariana Trench. Let him think this is his empire. Men like him need to feel in control, even when they're completely lost. Once we're established, I can phase him out. Emotional liability waiting to happen. Marcus turned to stare at Sophia, betrayal written across his face in letters 10 feet tall. You said we were partners. Sophia's mask slipped. We are. Those messages are out of context. They're time-stamped and verified, Elena said calmly. Sophia wasn't building an empire with you, Marcus. She was building one on top of you. You were always just a wallet and the fall guy. The room watched as Marcus and Sophia's partnership disintegrated in real time, each turning on the other with accusations and denials, their voices rising until security had to step between them. Enough, Elena said, and somehow her quiet voice cut through their chaos. The screens shifted one final time. What you stole wasn't just my code, Elena said. It was classified sovereign technology, algorithms protecting national infrastructure, encryption securing military communications. Federal agents appear from the wings, badges out, faces grim. The United States Department of Justice, working with international partners, has been investigating this theft for the past 3 weeks. Marcus's lawyer face finally kicked in. We have rights. Due process. You can't just... I'm not doing anything, Elena said. They are. I simply provided evidence of crimes against national security. The arrests, the asset freezes, the charges, those are all government actions. Legal, proper, inevitable. She wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the whole truth either. Elena had fed the authorities everything, built their case for them, made it so airtight that prosecutors were salivating. But she'd also used surveillance that crossed legal lines, deep fakes that bent truth, frozen assets before warrants existed, using back channels and favors from intelligence agencies that officially didn't cooperate with civilians. She'd bent the system until it broke, then carefully hid the fractures. The agents moved forward. Marcus Thorne, Sophia Crane, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit economic espionage, theft of trade secrets, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. Wait! Sophia's voice cracked with panic. She pulled away from the agent reaching for her, stumbling toward the stage. You want to see the truth? The real truth. Her eyes were wild, desperate. Elena's not the victim here. She's the monster. She surveilled us illegally. She created fake evidence. She manipulated all of you. The room went silent. Elena stood perfectly still, and for a heartbeat, Sophia thought she'd found the crack in the armor. Show them, Sophia demanded. Show them the deep fakes you created, the surveillance you ran without warrants, the assets you froze without court orders. You're not a wronged wife. You're a techno-fascist who thinks her money puts her above the law. Elena looked at Sophia for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was the saddest smile anyone in that room had ever seen. You're absolutely right, Elena said quietly. The room exploded with shocked murmurs. I did surveil you. I accessed communications I had no legal right to see. I created convincing deepfakes, though I never deployed them, just prepared them as insurance. I used my relationships with intelligence agencies to freeze assets before warrants existed. The federal agents exchanged glances. This was not how confessions usually went. I became exactly what I needed to become to destroy you. I crossed lines. I broke laws. I turned myself into something I'm not sure I recognize anymore. Elena stepped forward to the edge of the stage, and her voice dropped to something raw and real. But here's the thing that you'll never understand, Sophia. The evidence that's being used to arrest you is not the fake stuff. It's the real evidence you actually created by actually committing actual crimes. She gestured to the screens, which now showed clean chains of custody, properly obtained warrants, legally acquired surveillance. The deep fakes I made, they're sitting on encrypted drives that will never see daylight. The illegal surveillance, I never submitted any of it to authorities. The asset freezes, those were based on legitimate fraud flags that banks initiated themselves once I provided them with legally obtained transaction records. Sophia's face crumbled as she understood. You're being arrested for what you actually did, with evidence that will actually hold up in court. Everything I did that was questionable, it was just for me. To know the truth, to be prepared, to make sure that when I struck clean. But you just admitted. I admitted to crimes I'll never be prosecuted for, because I committed them in private, harmed no one except myself, and never used them in any legal proceeding. What are you going to do? Sophia? Tell prosecutors that the woman you defrauded and betrayed also happened to spy on you while you were committing your crimes. Elena's smile turned sharp. Good luck with that defense. The agents took Sophia's arms. She fought, screaming about injustice and corruption, but her voice faded as they led her toward the exit. Marcus just stood there, broken. Marcus. Elena's voice stopped him as agents approached. He turned, and the look in his eyes was so lost, so achingly young, that for a second Elena saw the man she'd married, the one who'd wake up from nightmares about his father and whisper, "Do you think I matter? Do you think I'll ever be enough?" "I loved you," Marcus said. His voice cracked. "I know I destroyed it. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know I did love you. I couldn't escape him. My father, his voice in my head, telling me I was nothing. I thought if I built something huge, something undeniable, maybe the voice would stop." Elena descended from the stage, walked across the floor until she stood in front of him. "I know," she said softly. "I know about the nightmares. I know about the fear. I held you through all of it, Marcus. I would have helped you build anything you wanted. We could have done it together. I know. God, I know." Tears streamed down his face. "I was so afraid of being ordinary that I became something worse. I became him." "No," Elena said. "You became exactly what he always said you were. A man who mistakes cruelty for strength." She reached into her jacket and pulled out the watch she'd given him 3 months ago. The one with the engraving. Our legacy. He left it behind when he moved out. "Your legacy?" Elena pressed it into his palm. "You wanted something that would prove you mattered, that you were more than your father's disappointment. You wanted to build an empire." Marcus clutched the watch, shoulders shaking. "Congratulations," Elena said. "You're about to become exactly what you feared most. Forgotten. Ordinary. A cautionary tale people tell at conferences about what happens when ego exceeds ethics." She stepped back as the agents moved in. "Elena, please." "Goodbye, Marcus." They led him away, and Elena stood alone in the center of the room, surrounded by the most powerful people on earth, all of them looking at her with something between fear and awe. 6 months later, the world had moved on. Marcus's trial was straightforward. The evidence was overwhelming, his defense non-existent. He pleaded guilty to wire fraud and theft of trade secrets, hoping for leniency. He got 7 years in federal prison and a restitution order for $280 million he no longer had. But the real punishment was quieter. His name became a punchline in business schools. Don't pull a Marcus Thorne meant letting insecurity drive you to self-destruction. His father's legacy of disappointment had finally found completion in the son who tried so hard to escape it. In prison, Marcus spent his days in the library, reading philosophy and writing letters that nobody answered. The voice of his father that had haunted him for so long finally went quiet. Not because Marcus had proven him wrong, but because he'd proven him right in the most spectacular way possible. Ordinary. Forgotten. Exactly what he'd feared. Sometimes, late at night, he'd touch the watch Elena had given him. Prison had let him keep it. Somehow, he'd stare at the engraving until the words blurred. Our legacy. Sophia Crane's fate was, in some ways, worse than prison. She'd made a deal. 2 years in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of the most humiliating probation terms ever written into a plea agreement. She had to maintain active social media accounts. She had to post regular accountability updates about her crimes. She had participated in sponsored posts where she warned young professionals against unethical behavior. Every post had to be tagged #court-ordered. The internet was merciless. From CEO dreams to sponsored cautionary tale. How's that empire working out, Sophia? Girl really thought she could steal billions and got reduced to making TikToks about ethics. The downgrade is insane. Court-ordered influencer content is my new favorite genre. She'd been forced to do a TEDx talk titled The Cost of Cutting Corners, a personal story of failure. The video had 12 million views, mostly from people making memes from her awkward pauses and forced tears. Panel discussions at tech conferences where she was a before example of what not to do. Podcast interviews where hosts asked increasingly brutal questions. So, when you were manipulating Marcus Thorne, did you ever feel guilty or was it always just strategy? Looking back, at what point did you realize you destroyed your entire future for $280 million you never even got to spend? Every dollar she earned went to fines and restitution. She was living in a studio apartment in Queens, working as a junior developer at a company that hired her specifically for the publicity of reforming a criminal. Her boss was 26 and fresh out of college. Hey, Sophia, can you grab coffee? And maybe while you're out, post something about the importance of ethical decision-making. Engagement's been down this week. She become the internet's favorite villain redemption arc that wasn't actually redeeming. A digital punching bag with a court order forcing her to keep getting back up. Late at night, she'd scroll through her old photos, Monaco apartment tours she'd posted before the arrest, designer outfits, poses with Marcus where they both looked like they owned the world. The comments on those old posts were brutal. This aged like milk. POV, you thought you were the main character. Tell me you're about to ruin your life without telling me you're about to ruin your life. Sophia Crane had wanted to build an empire. Instead, she'd become a meme. Elena Voss returned to her penthouse after the summit, and the first thing she did was pour herself a drink. The second thing she did was cry. Not the broken sobs from 3 months ago. These were different, quieter, the tears of someone who'd won the war, but lost something essential in the process. The apartment echoed with absence. She'd gotten revenge. Perfect, complete, devastating revenge. Marcus and Sophia had been destroyed exactly as they deserved. The world knew her name now, knew her power, knew better than to ever cross her again. So why did she feel so empty? Over the following months, Elena threw herself into work. She transformed Quantum Nexus from a shadow empire into a public force, stepping out of anonymity to become the face of ethical tech development. She funded scholarships. She created mentorship programs for women in STEM. She donated $500 million to organizations fighting economic inequality. The world called her a hero, but at night, alone in her office, Elena would pull up the surveillance footage she'd never deleted. Marcus and Sophia in those early days, before the betrayal crystallized, when Marcus still looked happy sometimes, when Sophia's smiles were occasionally genuine. She'd watched herself become something she'd never wanted to be, a person who used deep fakes, even if she never deployed them, a person who surveilled without warrants, even if she never submitted the evidence, a person who bent laws and manipulated systems and turned her pain into a weapon sharp enough to carve out someone's entire future. Was it worth it? She'd asked a reflection. The reflection never answered. 18 months after the summit, Sophia Crane probation officer called Elena. Ms. Voss, I'm required to inform you that Ms. Crane has requested permission to reach out to you directly. She's written a letter. You have no obligation to read it, but the terms of her probation require her to attempt reconciliation where possible. Elena almost said no, but curiosity won. The letter arrived 3 days later. Dear Elena, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did to you is unforgivable, and what I did to Marcus, manipulating his wounds, exploiting his fears, was evil. But I need you to understand something, not as an excuse, but as a truth. I saw your empire, and I was consumed by envy, not just of your money or your power, but of your certainty. You knew who you were. You built something meaningful. You mattered. I've spent my whole life trying to matter through achievement, through ambition, through taking what wasn't mine because I was too afraid I'd never create anything that's significant on my own. You destroyed me. Completely, and I deserved it. But in destroying me, you also freed me from the constant chase, the endless hunger for more. In this tiny apartment, With my court-ordered social media posts and my minimum wage developer job, I'm paradoxically more at peace than I ever was in Monaco planning our empire. I learned something you probably already know. Legacy isn't about size. It's about truth. And the truth is, I was empty. am empty. Working on becoming less empty. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that in punishing me, you also inadvertently gave me the only chance I had at becoming someone real. I hope you find peace too. Sophia. Elena read the letter 17 times. Then she did something she hadn't planned. She wrote back. 2 years after the summit, Elena sat in a coffee shop in Baltimore, the city where she founded Quantum Nexus in a basement all those years ago. Across from her sat Sophia Crane, older, quieter, wearing thrift store clothes and carrying a beaten-up laptop. "Thank you for meeting me," Sophia said. "I honestly didn't think you would. I almost didn't." They sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. "How's Marcus?" Sophia asked finally. "I don't know. I haven't spoken to him since the trial. But you still think about him." It wasn't a question. "Every day," Elena admitted. "I loved him. That doesn't just disappear because he betrayed me. I wish it did, but it doesn't." Sophia nodded. "I never loved him. I want to be clear about that. I used him, manipulated him, treated him like a tool. And that's something I have to live with. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve the truth. All of it, without manipulation, without strategy." Sophia's hand shook slightly around her coffee cup. "I've spent 2 years being forced to be honest. With the internet, with my probation officer, with myself. Turns out honesty is harder than I ever imagined." Elena studied her. The woman who'd helped destroy her marriage now looked nothing like the polished executive who'd seduce her husband. She looked human, flawed, real. "Do you regret it?" Elena asked. "Every single day. But not for the reasons you think." Sophia met her eyes. "I don't regret it because I got caught. I regret it because I genuinely didn't understand what I was destroying until it was gone. You and Marcus, whatever problems you had, you were real with each other. You loved each other. And I burned that down for money and ego." "Yes," Elena said quietly. "You did. I know my court-order redemption arc is mostly a joke on the internet. I know people think I'm just performing contrition to get through my sentence. But Elena," Sophia's voice cracked, "I genuinely don't recognize the person who wrote those emails about manipulating Marcus. When I read them now, it's like looking at a stranger, a monster." Elena felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. Not exactly. But something adjacent to it. Understanding, maybe. "I became a monster too," Elena said. "To destroy you, I had to become someone I'm not proud of. I cross lines. I use my power in ways that scare me when I think about them. But you were justified. Was I? Or did I just tell myself that to justify becoming exactly what I needed to be to win?" Elena leaned forward. "That's the question I can't answer. The question that keeps me up at night. Did you and Marcus turn me into someone terrible? Or did I always have that capacity, and you just gave me permission to release it?" They sat with that question hanging between them. "What are you working on now?" Elena asked finally, gesturing to the laptop. "Something small. A project with kids in underserved schools, teaching them basic coding. It pays almost nothing, but..." Sophia smiled, and it looked genuine. "It matters. In a way, nothing I did before ever did." Elena felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. "I destroyed you," she said. "I took everything from you. Your career, your reputation, your future. And you're sitting here telling me you're grateful?" "Not grateful. But transformed, maybe? You burned away all the false parts of me until only the real remained. And the real me is smaller than I ever wanted to admit, but at least it's true." Elena stood abruptly. "I need to go." "Elena, this doesn't change anything. What you did, what Marcus did, it broke something in me that I'm not sure could be fixed." "I know, but..." Elena paused at the door. "Keep doing the work with the kids. It suits you better than stealing empires ever did." She left before Sophia could respond. 3 years after the summit, Elena Voss gave a speech at MIT. The auditorium was packed with students hungry for success, for power, for the kinds of empires Elena had built. She stood at the podium, older now, still powerful, but different somehow. "You've all heard the story," she began. "The quiet wife who destroyed her betrayers. The quantum ghost who stepped out of shadows to exact perfect revenge. The woman who won." She paused. "Let me tell you what the stories don't say." The room leaned in. Victory is lonely when you build your life around destroying someone. Even someone who deserves it. You hollow yourself out in the process. You become defined by your pain, your rage, your need for retribution. And when it's over, when you won completely, you look in the mirror and wonder who you actually are without the anger driving you. A hand raised in the audience. A young woman, hungry and ambitious. "Do you regret it? Getting revenge?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I regret who I had to become to get it. I regret that I'll never know if Marcus and I could have survived his mistakes if I'd been willing to try forgiveness instead of destruction. I regret that I proved to myself I'm capable of ruthlessness that scares me. But do you regret destroying them?" "No," Elena said honestly. "They chose to steal, to betray, to build their dreams on my ruins. Actions have consequences. I was just a consequence." Another hand, a young man this time. "Would you do it again?" Elena smiled, sad and knowing. "Every single time. Because the alternative, letting betrayal go unanswered, letting people think my kindness was weakness, that would have killed something essential in me too. At least this way, I chose the terms of my own transformation." She closed her laptop, gathered her notes. "Build your empires," she told them. "But remember that every empire is built on choices. Choose carefully who you trust. Choose carefully who you betray. And choose very, very carefully who you underestimate. Because the quiet ones..." Elena's eyes glinted with something ancient and hard. "Were the ones who change the world when you push us too far." She walked off stage to thunderous applause. And in the audience, taking careful notes, was a young developer named Sophia Crane, attending on her probation officer's permission, learning what real power looked like. Their eyes met for just a moment. Elena nodded. Sophia nodded back. And in that gesture was an entire conversation. "I destroyed you. I deserved it. Are we even now? We'll never be even. But we're both still here. That's something. That's everything." 6 months later, Elena sat in her private office, 40 floors below the streets of Manhattan, surrounded by servers that ran the world. An anonymous tip reached her desk. Sophia was planning something. Not another theft, but something different. A platform for exposing corporate corruption, using techniques remarkably similar to what Elena had used against her: surveillance, data analysis, strategic revelation. Elena pulled up the files. Sophia was going after companies exploiting workers, executives covering up fraud, systems designed to protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. She was using what Elena had taught her, but redirecting it, becoming, in a twisted way, what Elena might have been if anger hadn't consumed her first. Elena's finger hovered over the delete key. One command, and she could wipe Sophia's entire operation. Destroy this redemption before it began. Instead, she did something else. She sent Sophia an encrypted message. "Your security protocols have 17 vulnerabilities. Fix them before someone less forgiving finds them. Also, the Hendricks Corporation CEO is hiding for $1 billion in offshore accounts. Might be a good first target. Good luck, E." Then Elena shut down her computer, turned off the lights, and rode the elevator up to street level. Outside, the city hummed with ordinary life. People worried about rent and relationships and whether they mattered. Elena walked among them, anonymous again, just another person in the crowd. The quantum ghost had stepped back into shadows. But this time, she carried something she hadn't before. Not peace, exactly, but maybe the understanding that revenge was a story with no ending. Only choices about what came next. And she'd made hers. So there you have it. Elena Voss destroyed the people who betrayed her, became someone she barely recognized in the process, and found that winning doesn't always feel like victory. Here's my question for you. Was Elena hero or villain? Did Marcus and Sophia get what they deserved? Or did Elena go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If this story grabbed you, if it made you think about trust and betrayal and the cost of revenge, smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because I'm bringing you more stories that dig into the complicated, messy reality of being human. Remember, the quiet ones are always watching. The underestimated ones are always planning. And the broken ones, they're the most dangerous of all when they decide to fight back. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, choose your betrayals wisely and never, ever underestimate the person you think is too small to fight back. Legacy isn't built. It's earned. And sometimes it's taken by force. The end.